So, hi everyone, we're here with the next instalment of our Ógra in Conversation With, and I'm joined by Billy Kelleher, MEP, this morning. Thanks a million for doing it, Billy.
Good morning, Dara Jane. How are you in Waterford?
All good. Going mad
Excellent.
a little bit, but sure, we'll
Yes.
have to keep going. So, Billy, you were first nominated to the Seanad in 1993 by Albert Reynolds, and then you went on to be elected to Dáil Éireann in 1997, and you served as a TD in Cork North Central until 2019, when you were elected to the European Parliament in the Ireland South constituency for Fianna Fáil. And during your time in the Dáil, you were also a Minister of State for Labour Affairs for 2 years. So safe to say you've had a long and varied political career.
Yes, I mean, look, I've been very privileged, and I was honoured, as you said, to be nominated by Albert Reynolds in 1993, and that was in the back of a general election that I stood in 92, where I was only 14 votes short of a Dáil seat.
My God.
So I was subsequently appointed to the Senate, and from then on, you know, I've had, as I said, the privilege of representing Cork North Central as a TD, and then I was appointed a Minister of State in 2007 by Bertie Ahern, and then following on from that by Brian Cowan as well. So overall, it was a very enjoyable, very interesting period in politics. You know, at the start, you had the whole issue around Northern Ireland, the Downing Street Declaration, the Good Friday Agreement, and then we're moving into, I suppose, the boom times, and then unfortunately the inevitable collapse of the economy, the banking crisis, and all that flowed from that, and the huge challenges that were around the government, particularly from 2008 onwards. And that really was a very difficult time, and challenging, but ultimately it was something that we had to do to try and rescue the country. But overall, I suppose the point I'm making in politics, you can't plan out a pathway. It's very difficult to do that, you know, or to say, I'm going to do this as a career. Circumstances and events dictate how you end up. And I suppose
absolutely,
over the years,
it's up to the electorate, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Yes, it is. And that's why I suppose in Ireland we have a unique relationship between TDs and their constituents. I mean, it is something that I've noticed since I've stepped out of national politics and gone to Europe, that the intimacy between the TD and the constituent is quite incredible, and it really is a strong bond and affinity. And it's something that, you know, I miss to a certain extent, that sort of real
being on the ground all the time.
Yes, but it's just that the public view you differently once you are no longer their TD, and they'll still recognise you and know you and speak to you, but they don't see you as their TD anymore, or they don't see you as being as relevant to their everyday lives. So that's one thing that I've noticed. But look, as I said, I was a TD from 97 to last year, and that was a very long and enjoyable time in Dáil Éireann, and I think a reasonably fruitful one, in the sense that I felt I worked hard, I did my best, and you know, ultimately I was adjudicated on that every election. So it's something that I'm proud of and privileged to have done.
And Billy, how old were you when Albert Reynolds nominated you to the Seanad?
I was 24 when I stood for the election. I was 25 when I was nominated. So I was born in January 1968. So I just turned 25. So at the time, I suppose, you know, back then, young people in politics was an unusual phenomenon, actually. So the same day, he would have appointed Brian Crowley as well, who subsequently went on to become an MEP from 1994 until last year as well. So the two of us were appointed on the same day.
Brilliant. And how did you get your start, I suppose, in Fianna Fáil and politics? Because I suppose, and especially for people in Ógra, to be nominated to the Seanad by the Taoiseach at 24 is you know, it isn't really done now, you know, so it really is kind of remarkable. How did you get yourself to be in that position?
Yeah. Well, I suppose, I would have joined the Fianna Fáil organisation. I've gone to the first coming meeting when I was 18 years of age. My family, my father's family would have been traditional Fianna Fáil supporters. My mother's actually wouldn't have been. But, you know, we weren't a very political household, by the way. We were just, I suppose, my father would have just supported the party, you know, at election time, and but nothing very active. He would never have attended meetings, but we would have been seen to be a Fianna Fáil family in the area. And as I said, I joined the Common in 1986. And, you know, I was involved in local election campaigns around that time as well. I had a neighbour who was standing for the council. And on top of that, the 80s was a very interesting time in Ireland and globally as well. Firstly, there was a huge recession. There was massive unemployment, massive immigration. So there was real social challenges in Ireland. It was a very conservative country as well at the time. And I suppose there was lots of things I didn't like about that. You know, I would have a liberal philosophy and people's entitlement to live their lives as they wish, and the need for economic reform to address some of the fundamental problems. So I started to advocate and agitate, I suppose, to a certain extent in my own way and in my own mind. And in the party, I suppose I was just questioning and challenging in Cork North Central and the constituency. So some people probably just took note of me and listened to me to a certain extent. And then there was a snap election in 1992, and I was asked to contest a convention by some senior members of the party in Cork North Central, and I missed out at the all seat by 14 votes in that election.
Yeah.
And that was in November 1992. And then I was subsequently nominated to the Senate in 93 by Albert Reynolds. So that's how it evolved. Now there's lots of other things in between that.
Yeah,
that was the main pathway to how I ended up in politics.
Brilliant. And like, I think we all know politics can be a difficult game in many ways, but particularly on a person's personal life, and especially when you go into it at a young age. So I suppose you were 25 when you became a senator, 24, and then, you know, that's very young. You know, you don't have your life set up at that point. So how, I suppose, did you manage that aspect of politics, and how your personal life changed, and how did you manage it going forward and up to now?
Well, I suppose I was lucky in one sense, in the sense that I wasn't married, I hadn't a family, so I really only had to think of the impact it would have on myself. And being truthful, I didn't think about that. You know, you were just excited to be a part of the national parliamentary system. You were in the Senate, you were a young person.
Yeah.
You know, it was just opening up opportunities. So I didn't really think about where will this lead me, what impact it will have on my life and, you know, on my future. I just grabbed that opportunity and felt that it was just a huge honor to be there and to be part of it. And bearing in mind, I hadn't set out, you know, when I was 18 years of age to be a TD or to be a senator. These things just happened and sort of organically and evolved. But it was an exciting time, as I said. You know, 1993, 1994 was a hugely exciting time in Ireland. You had the IRA ceasefire on the 31st of August 1994. And all that flowed from that. So it was really a really exciting time. And then on top of that, you had a new government, the first time ever that we had a major coalition between Fianna Fáil and another larger party. That was Fianna Fáil and Labour, Albert Reynolds, Dick Spring, two big names in politics. So all in all, it was just a time of excitement. And then we rolled into the 1997, 98, the Good Friday Agreement, Bertie Ahern coming to power. And then following on that, you know, years of massive expansion, rising employment, opening up the economy. So it was really an enjoyable time to be in politics, and exciting and interesting. And I said, then unfortunately it came to that end in 2008. So we had to sort of roll up our sleeves and really dig deep into the resolve of the political system, the resolve of the Irish people, to try and get ourselves out of that very, very difficult time. And I think we did that to a certain extent. You know, I mean, the Irish people made huge sacrifices. And it's ironic that we're now back in 2020 asking people to make huge sacrifices again in meeting the challenge and confronting the COVID-19 virus and sacrifices again that Irish people are making. So we're quite mature people. And that's one thing I've you know, can really say, looking back, when Irish people are asked to do something, they show great resolve. And while we are a happy, gregarious, outgoing people, when there is a real need, we can collectively work together to face huge challenges.
Absolutely, yeah. And I suppose even I know from crossing paths with you on the European campaign trail, your family have been unbelievable. I suppose you, like you say, you didn't have, you weren't married, you had no kids when you got into it. Um, and that obviously changed as time went on, but anyone can see that meets you out and about, that they're incredibly supportive, and that they're out on the campaign trail with you. I'm very proud as well to do so. So that's good that that's your setup in your personal life as well.
Well, certainly, I mean, during the European election, I mean, you know, the organisation, your family, your friends, but I mean, the kids they really enjoyed that campaign because it was a novelty, obviously, for them. But you know, we were going to different parts of the country. I mean, all of a sudden, we were no longer in Cork North Central every election. We were all over Munster, and we weren't allowed into Leinster, of course, at the time. But it was enjoyable. It was, and I think that's it was. From their perspective, I suppose it was the first time they could really feel that they were actually involved in campaigning, because they were old enough to go out and, you know, hang around with the members of the party and the candidate, their dad as well. So that was an enjoyable time.
Yeah. And how different did you find the European campaign, I suppose? Like, was it what you were expecting? Because obviously you're going from Cork North Central, which is your home base that you know, for 20 years you represented, so you know it very well, and you're going into a massive constituency that overtakes half the country, and 8 weeks to get as many votes as possible. So like, I know I found it daunting, and I wasn't even running, you know. So like, how did you find that? Was it the big step?
Well, I mean, what I found most fascinating about it was, like, firstly, as a TD for many years, you know, you feel that you know your constituency, as I said, very, very well, and you know the people that live in it. So the geography of your constituency and the people you know. But and then you think that you have that you're well known. You know, you have a reasonable profile. You're a front-bench spokesperson for a number of years, so you think that, oh, once I leave Cork, you know, people will still recognise me. But very quickly, you're brought down to earth when you're standing in a town or a village, miles from where you traditionally would be campaigning in Waterford or Limerick, Clare, or whatever, and you know, you're saying hello to people, and they're wondering, why are you coming up shaking their hand, because they just, I suppose, the European elections are a distant type of election. They're more presidential in style, in the sense that you're sort of trying to promote a big idea. As I said, it's not that intimate relationship that people have with general elections and local elections. So it is more distant. But I think that's an area where we have a lot of work to do as a party, particularly, is to re-engage our membership and our voter base with the concept of the European Union. And I think that we have been lethargic in that in recent times, bearing in mind we were the party through Lamass and Jack Lynch that really started that whole process of getting into Europe, joining the European, or the EEC as it was at the time. And we seem to have lost that real appetite for deep engagement between Fianna Fáil and the European Union. So I think that's something that I'd like to promote more, that we become active campaigners and that we see Europe in a very, very positive light, as is our tradition.
Absolutely. And I suppose we all, well, anyone involved in politics who's been out on the canvas will know that you definitely meet some characters. So I suppose, is there one canvas story, one funny story or an encounter you'll never forget over the years? I know it's hard to kind of think on the spot, but we all have those kind of little gems from the canvas trail.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, there's lots of gems from the European canvas trail, although the most recent gem I had was during the general election just gone by in Ballincollig in Cork. I just had said on a tweet, I was critical of RT's coverage of Europe, not of the European Parliament, but of Europe in terms of the number of journalists they actually have in Europe. And of course, people assumed wrongly, may I say, absolutely wrongly, that I was critical of Tony Connolly, the RTE correspondent in Brussels. So I was standing in Ballincollig in Cork during the recent general election. It was raining heavily, and I got an merciful belt in the back, and I didn't know what. I turned around. It was a woman after giving me a belt with an umbrella, and then she started to prod me with it, saying, "You leave my Tony Connolly alone," saying nothing bad about Tony Connolly. I love him dearly. So I got a very harsh lesson very, very quickly. But just to be clear, I wasn't critical of Tony Connolly. I was just critical of maybe the resources deployed to Europe in general by RT. And that woman, anyway, was certainly a great admirer of Tony Connolly. And but I live to tell the tale anyway.
Good, we're delighted. So I suppose a hard question, and one that politicians get asked a lot. And a lot of people think they automatically know the answer, and it's almost always wrong. But why do you do what you do, Billy?
Well, I do it for a number of reasons. I mean, I love it. It's what I know. I am passionate about the democratic process, about public representation. And I do like the European concept as well. So, I mean, when I was a TD, you know, I always felt I could contribute some way in terms of debates, you know, opening up. Like, for example, I mentioned earlier, Dara Jane, like, Ireland was a very, very conservative country, exceptionally conservative when I went into politics first. And, you know, we've come a long way since then. I'm not saying that I was the main proponent of that change, but I was a person that would have endorsed that type of change to become a more liberal, open society, a society where the individual had an entitlement to express themselves in whatever way. And that was something that was unheard of, being truthful. When I started out in politics first, I said it was rigid. There was a strong influence of church doctrine, and I just felt that, you know, to be a real republic, we have to make sure that the citizen is liberal, or can express liberal views, I should say, and that society isn't closed. And you know, we've unearthed a lot in recent years as a country, and I suppose you look at the whole issue of the institutional abuse, the difficulties we found in the mother and baby homes, and all of that. And that's a story that is there because Ireland was a very, very conservative, insular society for many, many years. And now that we've become more liberal, that the individual can express themselves, that people can live as they see fit, I think is a nice place for Ireland to be, and that's something that I enjoyed. That journey. It was a slow journey for many phases of it, but overall, it's something that I felt that I contributed to it in some small way, particularly as a Fianna Fáil TD. Bearing in mind, you know, we would have been conservative as a political party as well for many of those particular issues, in terms of the decriminalisation of homosexuality, the divorce referendum, for example, way before that, right up to the repeal of the 8th Amendment, marriage equality. So all of these big issues were things that, you know, I was involved in some way as a TD, and they're issues that you know, you look back and say, yeah, well, it may have made a small difference to somebody's life and to how we live with each other in society.
Brilliant. And it's so important as well that TDs and public representatives do take a stance on those issues, because at the end of the day, it is the people that they're representing. And I suppose for you then, I know you're you know, saying that you're just kind of a cog in the entire wheel, and it does, you know, it takes that whole machine to work. But for you personally, and your achievements, what would be the standout achievement for you in your career so far?
Are we back again?
We are.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, in terms of my career, I mean, there's a few issues that, you know, I would have been involved in as a minister and things like that. But I think the repeal of the 8th Amendment was probably the issue that most defined me in terms of my politics, in terms of achievement. I mean, I was the one that proposed the 8 weeks. It was what was legislated for subsequently. I mean, it's actually what the Irish people voted on. So, I mean, pretty much that committee worked hard. It was the 8th Amendment Committee. We sat down, we met, we listened to many witness statements. But I always had a view that we had to address this particular issue as a people, as a society. It's a very, very difficult subject to broach and to talk about. But I mean, I always felt that we just couldn't keep dismissing it and ignoring it, knowing that women were in terrible positions, girls were in terrible positions, and that as a country we were just washing our hands of it. So the 8 weeks or the 12 weeks was a proposal that I put forward at the committee, and that was subsequently ratified by the committee, accepted by the government, and overwhelmingly endorsed by the Irish people. So, I mean, that would be something that I was involved in a very meaningful way. Beyond that, I suppose, as a Minister of State, I was involved in the trade strategy that identified Asia, China, India, and other countries for Ireland to start exporting to and to start developing trade links and more diplomatic links. So there are two issues that I suppose that are of importance. But I think overall, when you look back at what you've achieved or what you set out to achieve, I just think being part of the whole process, as I said, a small cog in a bigger wheel, but at the same time, one of the people that was always supportive of that journey of changing society, the whole issue around, I said, liberalising our views and our opinions, and making sure that we leave it a better place than we found it, and hopefully I can say that.
Absolutely. And I suppose now that you've been elected to the European Parliament, your time is split now between 12 counties in Ireland South, your home base of Cork, Brussels and Strasbourg. So obviously the workload has increased, the travel time has increased. So if you have any downtime at all, how do you like to spend that?
Hill walking, for example. So, I'd like to head off into the hills of South Tipperary, or even Waterford, around Mahon Falls there.
Lovely
Cumra's
spot.
Cumra's are a beautiful walking area, the Knockmeal Downs. But I just like hill walking, and I also like coastal walking. I love nice coastal routes. So that's something, and I intend to do a little bit more of it. The Greenway, for example, from Dungarvan to Waterford now is absolutely a beautiful cycle or walk.
Brilliant.
And there's a few more of them have been developed around as well. So I intend to start exploring with the kids and more just those type of activities. But I must say I do love just heading off into the hills, or scaling Carrauntoohil is something that I enjoy as well.
Brilliant. Right, so I suppose that's the end of our in-depth questions. Billy, you'll be delighted to know. So now we're on to our Quickfire 5. So these are a little bit more light-hearted, but I think you're going to have to think on your feet a little bit. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so Billy, Barry's or Lyons tea?
Reared on lines, but now we drink Barry's. We put Civil War politics behind us.
Brilliant. So a politician from another party that you admire?
More recently, I admire Colin Eastwood, actually, from the SDLP. I think he's performed exceptionally well in terms of rebuilding a party that was really in big trouble. So from that point of view, and from what he represents, he's somebody I admire. Colin Eastwood, SDLP.
So your favourite place in Ireland, and you cannot say Cork?
I must say I love Kerry. I do. I love Kerry. Rambling around Kerry is a unique experience. So it has to be Kerry.
Brilliant. And Billy, what is your worst joke?
Oh my God. What does a baby computer call his father?
I don't know.
Data.
I don't even think I should be laughing at that one.
I have other ones, but I couldn't share them with you, but they would equally be worse than that.
Lovely. So, and the last one, Billy, describe your life so far using 3 film titles.
Oh, God. The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. I was in the Dáil from 97 to 2019, so Escape from Alcatraz, now that I've gone to Europe. And now that I'm in Europe, cast away.
Brilliant. Great. Well, that's, I think, all I have, Billy. So thanks a million for sitting down with us, and I hope you and the family are safe, and that we'll see you soon again.
Thanks, Dara Jane. Enjoy.
Thanks a million, Billy.
Bye.